All right, so we'll give everybody a couple minutes to log in.
Sure. Carrie, when you get a chance, just if you can send me a text. I have not saved your phone number.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
We'll just give it another minute.
Yeah.
Sometimes people's Zooms are slow.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, just getting in the. My office setup is that like behind my computer, there's like two big windows. And so my screen, like like I have the light on my back, so it's a little not ideal, but hopefully.
It looks good, and the map's very appropriate.
Okay, good, good. Yeah. And we were Jennifer Helfman, our marketing director. She helped me put the logo on there.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is she logging in now?
Yeah, I think, yeah, she said she would. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, we are recording, so if we want to go ahead and get started and people can join us as they come in. If you're ready, Mo, I'll get started.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Welcome, everyone, to MBIA's webinar today on the current immigration and visa system challenges during this pandemic. I'd like to introduce to you Mohammed Al Sayed, or Mo, or Mr. Sayed, depending. He is a principal with one of MBIA's members, Offutt Kerman, which is one of the fastest growing full-service law firms in the United States. Mr. Sayed, or Mo, is an immigration lawyer with expertise in business, employment, investment, and individual matters. When he approached us with this webinar idea, we couldn't say no. Immigration has always been such an important issue for our country and our industry and our members, and we're excited to see how the current state of things have affected this. So without further delay, I will turn the webinar over to Mo. All yours.
Thank you so much, Carrie. I really appreciate this opportunity. And I want to thank everybody that's participating. Good afternoon. I assume everyone's here on the East Coast. I want to thank MBIA for this opportunity. And hopefully we will be able to use the next hour or so to cover issues that are relevant to small businesses, and in particular in light of the really unprecedented times that we are experiencing right now. I have some slides. I hope that you all have access to the slideshow. I believe we will be making them available after the event. I will get right into it. One of the challenges in a setting like this, which is a online webinar, is that I don't have the benefit of seeing you. I think you can see me, but so I don't have a sense of like the spread of the audience. And it helps us a lot to hear from you. So typing out questions in the Q&A box or emailing the questions. The first slide had my email address to me or Carrie. And also in your questions, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, what your position is, what is your interest in immigration. So at the end of the program, when I'm through my slides, I'd love to have some time to take your questions and answer them. So one of the things that I want to convey is that even though we are in a difficult time due to the global health crisis, the quarantines, lockdowns, the economic downturn, and certainly the current administration has had a very challenging, very tough stance on immigration. So almost every day there's a announcement that declares that some program is being put on hold or suspended. And so there are a lot of these uphill battles that we have, but there is still a business case. There are still opportunities. We are still seeing a lot of growth and movement on our cases. So I want to convey that, and hopefully you'll see that as we progress here. Certainly a big chunk of my time will be spent. I want to make sure that I cover, sort of an immigration 101, if you were to just kind of lay out, okay, here's what immigration means, because I think a lot of people have heard bits and pieces, but I want to present at least in a summary fashion, like an A to Z of what is it that it means, right? And what are the options? So that's going to be, I'll be spending some time on that area. Again, my email address for questions is, mo.syed@offitkerman.com. And I believe that a recording and the slides will be available on the MBIA website later on. So please do send it around to folks that you might think are interested. Okay, so what is the climate that we're in? So we've got COVID-19, and we have just a flood of different issues, right? In terms of what you have as a business to deal with, to overcome challenges that are presented by all the changes we're seeing, right? Like there's lockdowns, there's the economic fallout to industry, and I think everyone is pretty familiar with all of what the challenges are as businesses. There's the PP loans, there are unemployment and things like that businesses are navigating. And a lot of that is outside my area of expertise, honestly, so I defer to my colleagues. I mean, I know that Offit Kerman has a whole COVID-19 website, and we have organized teams internally to address specific issues cutting across multiple areas of practice, and immigration is one of them. So what I've seen in my wheelhouse is that we have the foreign workers that are here that have been laid off, or there's need to cut their hours. And what do employers do? What are the requirements? What are the implications for employees, and things of that nature. So what we have essentially is a at the same time as we have all of these challenges, we also have an opportunity, right? We have, what I found is that there's many foreign businesses and families, investors that are concerned about the long-term future of their own countries where they are. I mean, for whatever it's worth, I mean, the U.S. has a lot of challenges in its handling of the pandemic, and we're leading, unfortunately, in terms of like the number of cases and everything. But there are other countries where there's a lot of fear among the populations, and those who, and they still look up to the U.S. as like a secure, safe economy, a safe place to raise their families. And so I'm seeing people interested in buying U.S. businesses or investing in U.S. businesses, becoming partners, or they have businesses already back home that they are interested in expanding into the U.S. So there's still a lot of movement on the business and investment side, right? So this presents opportunities for American businesses, and we'll get into that in terms of the details of that and the different visa categories. And it's critical because what is critical is to have the knowledge, just a working knowledge of what are the moving parts, like what is it that would interest a foreign business in terms of immigration, like, right? What would their how would they come to the US and start living and working here? What is the procedure? What are the mechanics of all of that? So we'll go into some of that. And the next slide, let's see. All right. Okay, so there's been a ton of executive orders, right? Recently, almost every week there's something. There's just so much that I can't get into, within this the time that we have. But what I can quickly summarize that, at a later point. The summary, I will get to the summary of the executive proclamations in a later slide. How do U.S. businesses raise capital, from foreign investors that are interested in an immigration benefit? Okay, so I'll try to lay out some of those categories. How do you create a joint venture with a foreign company, which can be both a source of talent? For example, I have U.S. clients that have offshore offices. I had one the other day for an engineering company where they have a relationship with an Indian company where they work with, and they have engineers that are working remotely, and they want to bring some of these engineers over, and it's difficult to do on other types of visa categories. But if they have a joint venture or even an affiliate relationship between the entities, such as a common ownership, those employees can be transferred to the US much easily than some of the other visa categories. Then on the employment side, how do you hire folks that are have a particular skill set as employees rather than as business partners? And what is the impact of furloughs and layoffs on existing foreign workers, right? So thinking through all the issues is important and to know for strategy and planning. So that's an area that we'll touch upon as we move through the presentation. Just looking, I had a couple of questions and comments come in, so I'm just looking at the other screen. I have, okay, all right, okay, so good, yeah, so I was reading that question. So I'll just read out the question. It says, I'm generally interested in issues and challenges around immigration more from the immigrant's perspective than the employer's perspective. But I'm guessing my interest is different from most attendees. Yes and no. Many times the interests are aligned because the foreign worker is an asset to the company, and they are, and it varies. I think it varies. I think the firm culture, the industries, the location, the class of worker, what you're talking about in terms of the, but it's a great question, and I'll try to keep that in mind as I move through the different issues. So thank you for that. All right. Here's what, our main focus, right, is going to be on the business and investment side. And this slide has the main visa categories that are the EL, EB5, H-1B, F-1 OPT. These are traditional ways that people can come and work either as an employee or as an investor and business owner. Okay, so this is a summary, and we'll get to these in more detail. So I'll start with the kind of an immigration 101, and then we'll get into these different visa categories and some of the different types of details. So let's just get right into it. Okay, so what I want you to kind of, these are some of the core concepts that I'd like everybody to think about, and hopefully this will be a little bit sort of clarifying, right? And what I want you to think about is, like, I mean, you can see this, I think you can see a little bit of this map that's behind me, right? Now, if you could see this full map, what I would do right now is point to a map of, like, the US, right? So there are those of us who are inside the US, right? So there's a ton of people in the US. There's US citizens, there's like foreign citizens, there's people that are married to US citizens, there's people that are living, working for US businesses, and all these different types of people that are inside the borders, the geographic borders of the US, okay? How they are granted benefits in terms of, like, their ability to live and work in the US is done within the US by the immigration agency, which is the USCIS, okay? So if they come in as a student and now they get a job offer, the USCIS will be the entity that reviews and approves their petition. And that can all happen within the US. They don't have to leave the country to get this benefit. If you have someone that's already in the US, let's say as a tourist, and they decide that, hey, they fall in love, they want to get married, they can petition to change, to adjust their status to that of a permanent resident based on their marriage relationship to a US citizen. Okay, so now, as compared to that, then you have those that are outside the borders of the U.S. that are the rest of the world. They're like spread out in different countries, maybe in space. But for those people, well, there's no embassies in space, so let's just leave those out. But all these countries have embassies, right? And so folks that are living abroad, they get their benefit from the embassies. Okay, so they have to present a adequate set of documents, an approved petition, and apply to the embassies. Okay, so here's where I can mention the executive orders. So as a result of the COVID pandemic and health concerns, the embassies are mostly shut down. So on top of that, like, there's an executive order that says that pretty much all kinds of visa issuance is suspended. Right? So that's where the impact of these proclamations, executive orders is that's the main focus. They are not focused on this USCIS processing that is happening within the US. So if you're already here, you can get benefits and changes and extensions, even though they're slow, because there's, not a lot of activity that's happening that's in person. So there's not interviews happening, there's not fingerprinting happening. So while the processes are in sort of, they're live, they're not like shut down, but they're slow. Okay, so just keep this in mind. When they say visa does not mean, visa is not the only thing that you need to have, or it's not like an exclusive thing that you need, that you have like entered on a valid visa that's stamped in your passport. You can have other kinds of approvals that allow you to continue to stay in the US, even though your visa may be expired, right? So visa, now the next point, visa is just a piece of paper. It's the way someone analogizes it is let's say you buy a ticket to go and watch a movie. That ticket lets you in the theater, okay? Now, whether you can continue to stay in the theater depends on other things. Doesn't mean that you had a visa just to come in once, that you can just kind of stay there. Now, status is something that can be extended. So once you come in using a visa and you're in, let's say, a tourist status, like, which right now there's a lot of this happening, and I think it's kind of interesting because, you have a ton of people that are in the US that came in as tourists. I have this one family where they came in as tourists, mom and dad. son, unfortunately, was in the U.S. The son is a U.S. citizen, and he had a illness, so they came in earlier before the pandemic to be with their son, and he was unfortunately in the last stages of a battle with cancer. So mom and dad came to the U.S. Unfortunately, son passed away, and then COVID happened. So dad has a job back in their home country, but the home country is now under complete lockdown. The university is shut. He can't go back. There's no flights back home. Now his visa is expiring. So what does he do? He can apply for an extension of that status. So that's not a visa. That's an extension of status that allows him to stay here for, let's say, another 6 months. So even though his visa stamp in his passport, the date of entry has passed, but his status can get extended. So, I mean, keep that distinction in mind. Inbound versus outbound, right? So a lot of people will call me and say, hey, Mo, I mean, a lot of people, they're not very happy with the current administration or with other things that are happening, and they want to leave. Like they want to go to other countries. They want to go to Canada. I just had a call yesterday with someone that wanted to go to Italy, and they asked me like, hey, can I do this? And so, I have to be careful because I'm licensed in the US. I know US law. I'm, as a professional, authorized to offer advice. But I'm not a Canadian lawyer, and I'm not like an Italian lawyer. So inbound versus outbound, right? So I handle inbound, right? I handle US. Outbound is like a whole nother sort of, universe. Now, some concepts may be similar to what's in the US, but for those cases, I do take those cases, but I partner with other lawyers, right? So I would partner with an Italian or with a Canadian because they have the subject matter expertise. And there are some lawyers actually advertise themselves. They're based in the US, but they're outbound global lawyers, and we have those people practicing, but then they don't do any US work. They only do the foreign work. Because in some countries, you don't have to be a lawyer to, like, immigration law as such is not like a legal topic. Like they may be like, like travel related professionals that are not licensed lawyers. But they are in their home countries, authorized to offer advice, right? So the culture from country to country is different as well. Okay, in status versus out of status. So this is an important idea. So somebody comes here as a student and they're studying, and their visa period covers like through the end of their semesters and the term. They graduate and they stay here past the date of their authorized stay. At that point, they become out of status. Okay, so they're not maintaining their status, and there are different levels of penalties based on how long it is that you've overstayed and the reasons why you've overstayed. Okay, and your ability then to extend your status or to change to another kinds of status is impacted, like, because you cannot, like, if you've been out of status, you can't then apply to change status to get a work visa. You can't then, let's say, if you're a student and you've been out of status and now you get enrolled in another program and you want to simply just, change to a new student visa, you won't be allowed to do that because of the gap that you've created by overstaying. Okay. Now, it does not mean that there's no relief. Like there's, if you're married to a U.S. citizen and you apply on a marriage-based case, spouses of U.S. Citizens are forgiven their out of status period. They don't look at how long you've been out of status when looking at marriage cases due to family reunification grounds. So that's one option. There's, a lot of folks do refugee and asylum applications. For them, it's not as bad a thing to be out of status as it is for some other types of categories. And what you need to do if you're out of status is typically you got to leave the country, reapply for a visa outside, and then try to come back in. But they won't change or extend your status within country if you're out of status. Now, and if there's long periods of out of status, then the embassy will be tough. Like, you have to show a waiver, you have to show a good reason for why you were out of status. And so the embassy has the authority to issue a waiver, all right? So, okay, I'm gonna try to speed up here. Let's see, we're 12:26, okay. All right, so we did, all right, here. So I was thinking of ways in which I can convey the different concepts that over the years I've picked up related to immigration, and how do I classify and categorize them in a way that are easy to convey to an audience like you guys. So I've created this table, okay? The information at the top, these are the categories that we'll spend some more time on, where I want to make you an expert in those areas. So that's going to be the bulk of our focus: employment, business, investment. Okay. However, you should know that there's a family category, so spouses, siblings, parents, and unfortunately, this has come to be known as chain migration, which I don't like that term. Family reunification is the core of our immigration system. And, I myself came here as a student from a foreign country. And if the system didn't exist, if my, wife and my mom and dad were not able to come here to live with me, I would have gone back, because it would not be feasible to have the family, especially parents in old age, living alone in a developing country, which is, not safe for elderly people. So, the family-based visas are, there's a lot of different types. And so that's one area. There's immigration lawyers that specialize in family. I do some family. Then there's the students that they have their own set of issues. And transitioning from student visas onto other visas, that's also another area of expertise and specialization. Then there's visitors. I wouldn't really call that as a specialty, but you should know that a lot of people come in for business or pleasure for short trips. So these are visas. These are not like people that are coming here to live. In fact, the students may not be coming here to live. But the visitors are a few different kinds. You've got business, you got pleasure, tourism, and most of the times you've got to show that you're going for a short trip and that you got a settled life in another country that you're going to be returning to. Some countries, you need a visa. You need to go to an embassy and apply for a tourist visa or a business visitor visa in order to come in. Other countries you don't. You have Europe, Canada, essentially Americans. Those nationals can come and go to from the U.S. without needing an actual visa. There are limits on how long they can stay and what they can do here. Gainful employment is not really permitted. And then there's the rest of the world that I described earlier. Then you've got the extraordinary ability folks. So these are people that are really the champions. Let's say, if it's the Building Industry Association, if you have a professional that's at the top of their career in the world, that they're like the number one, or among a top group of elite people that can, let's say, make an impact on the industry. If they can show that, yes, their accomplishments are like way beyond anybody else in their field, they can apply for this extraordinary ability. It can be a permanent situation or a temporary situation, depending on their plans. And so it all depends on, what their motivations are. So this is the category where you have actors, models, scientists, sports people that are under this category. So I do a lot of those cases as well. And then there's the refugee and asylum category. folks who do that work are it's very specialized, and it's not an area that I do a lot of. I've done some, but I would refer these cases to other folks. Now, just to know, when they apply for refugee or asylum, they do get work authorization while their applications are pending, and their applications can be pending for a couple of years. So folks who are on refugee status or asylum status, usually, I mean, if their status is approved, then they become permanent residents and then they can become US citizens. So that's different. But while they're waiting for their approval, they can have work authorization. And if you come across folks like that, they have valid work authorization, then they're good. Naturalization, that's where permanent residents can apply for citizenship after a certain amount of time. So there are some considerations here, like there's a test of moral character. There's a very careful review, and there's a test of English language, which is, they don't do that in the permanent resident applications. You're not required to have English language skills, and in a lot of these visa categories, English language is not like a deal breaker. Now obviously it would be a student, they require an English language, test, but in the family categories, initially they don't. But when you do apply to become a citizen, then you need to know English. There's a test of English as part of the interview. Okay, then I said like I listed DACA and TPS. So those are like special categories for special situations, right? So DACA is more like, it's kids who came here with their parents when they were very young, and the parents crossed the border without documents, and their children are like, kind of innocent in this whole situation. So there's relief given to them, work authorizations, and it's a big controversy in the with the administration and the legislation side. TPS is temporary protected status, where the government has the authority to, help folks that are in a disaster-struck area and they can't go back home, and so they're given TPS status and they can stay here and work here. So that's another specialized area of law. Something that I do is, I call it litigation delays, but it should actually be delay litigation, which is that in a lot of these things, like you can have extreme delays for no reason, and no communication from the agencies, and multiple requests for status updates, but people just kind of waiting for years and years. So then what we do is we file a court case in the federal court system, and we litigate against the USCIS and sometimes Department of State if they're overseas. I've done several of these cases to help people to expedite their matters. And so that's another area that people practice, and they call that the writ of mandamus, which is kind of a judge ordering the executive branch to get their act together. It can get expensive for individuals. It's the kind of thing where litigation can be expensive. You don't have a clear sense of like how long it will take and how much the government will fight back. And so I do a lot of that, the litigation of immigration cases. Then there's removal and deportation, and that's where we're kind of like, this chart ends. And that's where, someone's been in the country without documents, or with expired documents, and they get picked up by the enforcement side, and they get put into proceedings. And depending on certain factors, they can be summarily removed without a hearing, and then there are hearings where folks can present grounds for like withholding of removal, grounds for not being deported, and that's another very specialized area of law where they you go in front of an immigration judge, and you have to then it's like an administrative proceeding, or it's like a court proceeding. So lawyers who do that, they tend to only do that. I don't know how much time that took me. I think I did that within 10 minutes. So I'm kind of proud of myself. But there's a lot, and you can dig deeper and deeper in these categories. And yeah, if you have other questions on this, like please do email me. Be happy to even like take a phone call or have a separate discussion about any of these issues that you guys want. Okay, another area, and this is relevant to employers, and this is the I-9, right? So an employer has an obligation to examine documents that prove identity and authorization to work. And there's a list of specified documents. The guidance is on this website at the bottom left. I encourage you to consult it. It's important to know, like, I mean, I think there are certain misconceptions in this area. One of the big ones is that if somebody has a social security card that they are authorized to work. That's not the case. You need to see additional documents. Another misconception is that if you don't have a social security that you're not authorized to work. That's also not true. People have all kinds of other documents which provide them the authorization to work, even though they don't in that moment have a social security card. Okay, so now the other side of this is, you know, the I-9 verification is the front end. Now on the other side, you've got the compliance side, right? Or I mean, you may have situations where somebody had a valid authorization, but it expired and the employer didn't follow up. Or I have situations where an employer, like there was an acquisition and an employer takes over employees from a pre-existing employer, and their I-9 check was done back when they were hired, but you know, does the new company, the acquiring company, do they have an obligation to then inspect again? So, you know, bottom line, being vigilant and knowing exactly what the details are of you know, what you're examining. And I think, you know, in terms of, I mean, you know, one of the things that unfortunately happens is that because of all the noise and all the negative sort of information out there, like sort of, I guess it tends to be anti-immigrant. A lot of employers are just hesitant, like they don't want to, you know, if somebody's like a foreign national, they don't even want to really consider them, or they're afraid that, like, you know, they're just not keen to really get their head around what types of work authorizations exist, and just knowing that, you know, hey, it's really not such a big deal. It's very easy to verify these documents, and there's really no consequence. I mean, unless you are knowingly like committing fraud and hiring people that are not authorized to work, you know, there's a system that provides very valid legal ways to hire foreign nationals, right? So, and you know, and that's why you should consult with me. All right, so let's go. Okay, so I think I duplicated the slides, but yeah, I mean, so here's the website on the I-9s that gives like the penalties for violations and how they calculate the violations. And these are like per employee. And I believe that the longer the violation lasts, they have, or if it's a repeat violation, that's how the fines go up. Yeah, I think we talked about the social security numbers. You know, I encourage you to look up E-Verify. That's a really, there's a push. I don't think it's mandatory, but employers that use E-Verify have the convenience of entering the potential hires information and getting a response from the government on the status of work authorization for certain people. On the I-9 side, what has happened as a result of the pandemic is that you have a relaxation in the inspection requirements, and it was just like extended like within the last 10 days, I think. Our firm website has some logs on this issue, but the idea that people are, you know, because people are working remotely, employers have been exempted from the physical inspection part of the law of ID and work authorization documents. So employers are given flexibility in conducting remote inspections. So like, let's say on Skype or, email, as long as they then comply later on when they do have the opportunity to do like a physical inspection over several days, then they can be deemed to be in compliance with the law. So that's an important one for people working remotely. Let's see, just check. Okay, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on H-2B, but H-2B is a program where you can get temporary workers for certain very specific tasks. And so one of the relaxations was that even though you had these bans on visas, you could have these H-2B workers that could, if they were deemed essential infrastructure operations or related to the food supply chain, there was some relaxation. There is relaxation on these types of visas that are for very specific parts of the economy that are sort of critical. And this is for agricultural workers to supply the nation's food chain. Again, H-2B non-immigrants that have this status were given priority in the system of the visa issuance. So I just wanted to state those out there. And there are other relaxations that I'll talk about later, which is like, I said that there's a ban on visas from overseas, people coming in. There are waivers, like which if you can show that somebody is in the national interest, which is, you can show economic interest, all kinds of other interests, and then workers that are in healthcare, that if they're coming to the US for COVID-related work, there are exemptions for those. Okay, so alrighty. Now I am aware of the time. So what is happening, right, with the economic downturn? So you have all this different parts moving. So cash flow, human resources, foreigners trying to buy stuff, or like, there's this idea that there's like good deals to be had, and then workers being laid off, remote working, many employees, for example, employers like, and this is a good moment to mention this. I have clients who have foreign workers that were visiting their families in outside countries during this pandemic, and they got stuck. Like, they're quarantines, no flights out, nothing. And then the US is not allowing people in, from Europe, if they've been to even other country nationals that have been in Europe within the last 14 days, and the UK and Brazil, and I think there's other countries on that list. And so now the employment relationship is continuing remotely because they're able to work remotely. But then what is the status of like their visa? If they stay out for too long, does that impact their visa? If they're just basically now there for like a whole year, do they have obligations in their foreign countries? So these issues are coming up quite a bit in this remote work environment. And the other sort of, we're seeing this with online education, like where there's like actually, so right now you can't, like the new incoming freshman classes in schools where they're all online, they're not being issued visas to come in if their school is all online, right? So we were concerned that this may be extended to employment, like, because, the argument is that, hey, if you can do your job online, why do you need a visa to come into the US, right? So that's tricky. And it's very unfortunate because some of my clients had, apartments and their life, their, I don't know, boyfriend or girlfriend or spouse, like that's here, and they were simply traveling overseas, and now they're stuck, and now they're uncertain about their future. So, it is compassionate. Alrighty. So now I'm jumping right into the business side of visas. All right. Now, it's just switching gears completely and coming from a very general kind of discussion to a very focused discussion. And I'm afraid it looks like I will go over the 1 o'clock time, so I hope that's all right. Okay. The reason I get right into this is that for your E visas, your L visas, and your EB5 visas, these are all different visas where you have a foreign national or a foreign company that's investing into the US, partnering with a US company or doing its own investment and hiring employees. Critical piece of what they have to demonstrate to the US government is a business plan, right? You have to show that you've got the finances, you've got the business acumen, you have a plan, like a 5-year business plan, milestones, like projections of revenue. What is your market strategy? What do you do? Like, they want to understand what is the business going to do. So if I imagine, I'm just trying to think, and I wish I had spent more time thinking about business industry, building industry types of situations. So you can have a number of contractors. You can have even right, let's say a building business where you have a investor that is, like, let's say they have a building company in their home country and they have a wealth of knowledge and money, and now they want to get into the US market. So so they would look at all sorts of inputs into their the value chain. They would look at the geographic area where they're locating, show how many employees they're hiring, and then that also depends on, like, if your business is going to be like labor intensive, or is this a kind of business that you can do remotely from a home office? So spending time on writing a good business plan is critical. And as a legal professional, I can set out the specifications, but it's really not in my wheelhouse to create these plans. Now, a lot of businesses are very sophisticated and they have strong business plans that they have for other reasons, not for immigration reasons. But I work with experts that are professional immigration business plan writers. And so this will help, let's say E2, I have somebody right now that's got $70,000 and they want to create their own small consulting business. And so they're working on a business plan right now. So this is a foreign national that will apply for their own E2 visa. And they'll show that, okay, I've put $70,000 in a US bank account, and here's my business plan, and I have the experience and knowledge needed to do this, and they can come here, and as long as the business is running, they can be indefinitely keeping it afloat and getting the visa renewed. Now, here's where the part comes in for the US business. The US business can be a 50% partner of this person. So the E2 investor has to be they have to have at least 50% of the business, okay? So they can have a US partner, and it really helps them because, say they're coming in and they invest in some business in the building industry. They can buy in to an existing LLC or a corporation, invest whatever it is, like 100,000, 200,000 or more, like it can go up. And they can get a visa, and the US business then has essentially injected a lot of capital in their business, and then it can work really well for both sides, okay? And these E2 folks, they can, they'll come in as a primary investor, but then they can also hire essential employees that are also nationals of the E2s have to be nationals of certain treaty countries, right? So I should mention that E's have that limitation. And so they can bring employees from their home countries. And so I have like a client that's a Korean restaurant in Georgetown in DC, and the owner's a Korean national. And so she then brought over her chef, like that was a chef in Korea, and he was brought in as an essential employee. So you have that ability. L's are going to be intercompany transfers. That's where you have an existing overseas business and you have an executive or manager or like a specialized knowledge worker. We see this in IT, we see this in a lot of tech, where you have folks that really know the clients well, they know the products well, or executives that are essentially coming to boost their US operation. And they can file the transfer. All they need to show is 1 year back home as in that job, and then a US job with an affiliated company. So that's where also the US business could give a 50% stake to the foreign business, and then you have this qualifying relationship. You need the same control group, right? So you need the foreign company and the US company to have the same control group. So if you give them a 50% stake, then, and you can bring in their executives, and if you need foreign employees, that could come in on very specific roles. So this is another way to generate some finances. EB5 it's a whole nother specialty. That is your very high dollar investments. So currently the thresholds are 900,000, and then I think it's 1.8 million, or I'm not 100% sure. They raised it from 500 and a million to 900 and like 1.9 or 1.8. Sorry. What that does now, that's a lot of it will not deal with. I don't think it might deal directly with your community, because one type of EB5 deals with regional center projects. Now there are, I mean, certainly the regional center projects hire building industry professionals and companies, because their projects are like, you know, they'll build hotels or malls or there was one recently, nursing homes. You know, it could be anything, and they collect these 200, 300 investors with a lot of money, and they fund these projects, and those investors get green cards, which is permanent resident card. That's the formal name, is permanent resident card. The green card is like the informal name. So these individuals, they can be from any country, they can do this type of investment and get a green card. Now, I was talking about the regional center. Now, you have a direct investment where they can buy a business that's like for at least a $1.8 million. And this is where perhaps members in your community might have like an interest, where these investors have to show that they're investing like, you know, this high dollar amount. And over the next 2 years, there's going to be creation of jobs or maintenance of existing jobs, which otherwise may not have happened, and a impact on the community, a positive economic impact. And these folks can then use their money to get a benefit. And then perhaps this could be like, you know, a sale transaction. And so I know, you know, this area is really vast, and it's like, you really have to work with a good professional to, like, you know, there's brokers in this area that will be kind of visible in foreign countries. There's all kinds of professionals in this area that will like connect with those EB5 investors. And there's high demand for it. It's, you know, been robust. There's a ton of like visa applications filed for the EB5 investors. And these are permanent green cards, so they're really kind of coming to move here. Okay. So, okay, I mean, this is a lot of detailed information in these slides. I'm going to try to cover them quickly, and I mean, and try to really just touch upon the critical differences. Okay, so in the investment side, now that's like, you know, I think very important. On the investment side, the source of funds is very important. So, and it's twofold. I mean, you know, one is obviously to rule out criminal activity. So you can't get investment from someone that's a fraudster that's, you know, made money by like, you know, gaming the system or through criminal activity. So there's a lot of checks in the process where as as a lawyer, that's the first thing that I have to do is to say, hey, you have whatever, $1.8 million in a bank account. You have to go back historically and show me each and every banking transaction and show me the source. Like, was it your income? Okay, if it is your income, show me your documents that show all that income. If it's a sale of property and inheritance, how did your dad who bought that house make his money? So, it's really very detailed. So I know some of you have to leave, so please just email me questions, and thank you for attending. So the source of income, okay. Then the size of investment, which is in the the EB5 is very clear, like there's a dollar amount that you've got to invest. On the E's and the L's, it's not very clear. Like, you can have small businesses. You don't need a big, huge enterprise. I've got L's with like a handful of employees, like maybe 2 or 3. E's can be approved with even just a single investor, as long as they can show that they will be generating the evidence going, the jobs and economic activity once they come here. So on the E2, the test is substantial relative to the capitalization of the enterprise, right? So they're going to see, okay, what are your needs? If you're buying a business, have you bought it at market value? Show what do you call it? What is it called? Evaluation. There's another word. Appraisal. Show an appraisal. Right? On the L, L is nice because they don't really look at the source of funds. Like, as long as there's a business overseas, you'll be fine, right? Okay, so let's move along. E, E2, EB5, job creation, and whether or not they leave the green cards. That's in the last column there, last row. I'm going to try to wrap up so we leave time for questions. Let's see. Yeah, okay, for dependents. So there are different processes for dependents. I mean, typically they want their wife to, or husband to be able to work or go to school. So, and children under 21, they are allowed, but after 21, they need to get on their own visa status. This slide has details about the business plans. They all need business plans, especially if it's a new company. And they all have their own specifications. So just know that. Gotcha. So here are, right, like, so on your E2, you can have, like I said, investors. On the L1A, you can have intercompany transferees, and also like, joint ventures where partnering with foreign companies. EB5 is a straight big ticket investment. H1B is an employment-based visa. And F1 OPT is like our students who are authorized to work. I think that, just real quick, I mean, for Peter, the issue is that when you, in all of these situations right now, it's become very difficult for the immigrant or the, the foreign national that's trying to get a visa. I mean, the burdens of proof are so dramatic. The level of scrutiny, it almost, some of it is reasonable in the sense that they're valid questions, but a lot of it is just totally out of the blue, like wrong bureaucratic mistakes, like that are just being done all over the place. So in immigration law right now, there's a lot of frustration about this because it's just, everything's been done to create roadblocks, and it's not helping the employers, and it's not helping the employees, right? So, I mean, there's requests for evidence, like just a nonstop barrage of requests for evidence that are just not necessary. In fact, one of the things that was created was on the employment side, there used to not be interviews for people whose employers are sponsoring them for green cards. Because they were already working, they had a job. It's all based on very valid, legit, transparent transactions. And so they were not required to have interviews because the USCIS itself had determined, like, they used to have interviews, I don't know, like 20 years ago. And then the USCIS decided that it would be not a good use of resources, and they decided not to take interviews. But the current administration reintroduced interviews, and so that creates a lot of slowdown. It creates a lot more work that may not really even be very useful. So I mean, I try, from the immigrant side, those are some issues that are problematic. Okay, so all right, this is the same stuff. I think E2 treaty investor, treaty trader. So there's also a treaty trader as opposed to like investor, and that's where they can show that their business will create trade between the U.S. and their country. So that's one that also it can be useful. I think we talked about this already. There's an E3 category. If you have any Australians, that's like they have a special type of visa where they can come and work here. Okay, so just quick on the L1A. Like if someone is qualified for an L1A, which is a temporary visa, they can also get a EB1C, which is a green card version of the L1A. It's subjected to more scrutiny, but they have to show that back in their home country, they have 1 year of experience as a executive, and they're coming to the US in a established company to be an executive. And so they can qualify for a green card, and for various reasons, this is a very attractive category because it processes fast. Okay, the L1 spouses, I think you can consult this slide later if you have an interest. This in the context of some of these categories, like when you show that you have job creation and you have like a robust business, there's a case called the Matter of ZA, and it basically clarified that businesses, because now in the global economy, you have like human resources that are scattered all over. And so just because a business doesn't have a lot of employees in the US, they may have a big spend on contractors abroad. They may have, like 1099 type of folks that are based overseas, which even though that's probably not the right form, but the independent contractor or offshoring, outsourcing, and that's activity, that's work that the US-based supervisors are doing. So the idea is that that type of relationship can qualify in terms of proving your personnel requirements. Okay, we already touched this. We already touched this. We already kind of went over this. I mean, I should say that on the EB5 right now, that's in the exemption list from the general suspension of visa issuance. So there's clearly an incentive from the government to keep these programs active. In the EB5 context, I mean, one of the things is if your investor is going to a regional center, so they need help finding one. And that's a whole process of doing the due diligence. And so I work with financial experts in that area. I don't give advice on the selection of regional centers because I'm a legal expert. I'm not a financial expert, so I have to be very clear. But we have relationships with the appropriate professionals. Right, so EB5, just you look at brokers. Now this could be useful for some of you because if you're trying to attract someone to your own business, to put in $1 million in your business and then try to do like an EB5, then you need to know where are those people going. Business brokers, trade associations, industry conferences, local and state chambers of commerce, foreign chambers of commerce. I mean, I suppose like, China's big, India's big, the Middle East, some of Asia, so there's a lot of people that are interested. And, certain embassies and consulates might also have, an interest. I mean, so what you may want to do is look at all this different kind of resources out there and see what it is that might be of interest. Okay, so these ideas, right? What country they're from, what their immigration history is. When you're discussing with a potential employee or partner, you're going to ask them these questions, right? And hopefully, with what I've given you, you'll be able to figure out where you can fit them in, right? In the scheme of all these different types of visas. Um, so, you know, what is their education experience? That will tell you, okay, where can we do like an executive type of visa for them? What are they looking to do? Like, are they looking for a big rate of return on their investment? Are they looking for equity? Are they looking, you know, for control of the business? And then, you know, how long will it take? Like, what is the visa process for them? Like, are we looking at 2 years of waiting, or is this immediate? Um, and do you need to go through the Department of Labor, like on certain employment-based visas and permanent resident cards, you need to go through the Department of Labor. All right, so okay, you know, just quickly to understand the H-1B. So the H-1B and even the work-based green cards, like, I think this is an important idea, because now the H-1B workers are temporary workers that are coming to be in a specialty occupation, which means that the type of position that generally will require at least a bachelor's degree, okay? So that's one side. That's, you show the academic qualifications of your employee, and then you show the that the job is actually what it says it is, right? So I'm a lawyer. I mean, you can't hire me as a paralegal, right? You can't say that, oh, well, you know, a lawyer is a, you know, specialty occupation and we're hiring him as a lawyer, but you're actually giving me paralegal work. That's not going to work. You've got to show that you have the work, the lawyer work. Now, on the salary, so then you show that you are paying the prevailing wage at that level, right? So this is where there's some protection for US workers, so that, you know, folks are not like, you know, undercutting the salary and then thereby, like, you know, just kind of, you know, offering a job to a foreign worker. And these things have to be advertised, right? So you have to, I mean, you have to post in the company that you're hiring somebody that's a foreign national, and, you know, what you're going to pay them. And then the Labor Department has an opportunity to look at stuff. However, there's no continuing obligation to keep them employed. Like, if they don't work out, they get fired. So there's no, like, just because you're taking on this employee doesn't mean that you're kind of stuck with them. And I mean, you know, now the wage level commitment is there, that as long as they're with you, you have to pay them that wage. And also, it's not like immediate, like right at the time of the application, you don't have to be paying them that wage. Like, if they're a student that came off a student program and they have their 1 year optional practical training period, you can pay them whatever you want during that period. But then once they get on an H, then you have to match the minimum prevailing wage. And then the green card application. So say if you do a green card for somebody like this who's already with you on an H, you petition, you say that you're going to be paying them whatever the pay requirement is, but you don't have to start paying them that right away. You pay it after 1 year, 2 year, when that is approved and they start working with the green card. That's when you've got to pay them the prevailing wage. And in the meantime, as long as you're paying the H wage, you're fine. And the idea is that you can use that as an incentive to give me a big like an incentive to give them a raise, right? For say, okay, if you work really hard and you're, you know, still performing at that level, when your green card is approved, then we'll pay you the higher wage. But then just because you file something doesn't mean that you must hire them. If things don't work out, that's it, you can let them go. Okay, just student work visa authorization. You can have students, like if you like someone, if they come through the recruitment process where they're a student with a foreign F1 visa, you can hire them for 1 year. And then if it qualifies as a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics degree, which in building it might be, then you can extend it for 3 years, okay? All right, so, wow, alrighty. So we're 10 minutes over, but we're kind of done with the presentation here. And I want to leave you with the next webinar. Our law firm is doing a webinar on the future of international students enrolled at universities taking online classes. And there's a little link where you can go if you're interested to sign up. Please do. And we've covered a lot, and I will wait and see if there's any questions. So please type your questions in the chat bar. Let me see if I have any email questions. The chat bar is like, if you hover over to the bottom, you will see a chat box. Let me see. Let's see, any questions? Yeah, and you know, I would also contact Carrie at MBIA for more information. And I mean, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I want to thank Carrie for putting this together. If there's other topics that you all are interested in, if you know, legal topics, I mean, not just immigration, but we're a full service business law firm. So, you know, if you have other topics that you would like some, you know, conversation around, we can certainly put something together with some of my other colleagues that are experts in other areas. And last call for any questions. Anybody have any questions? We can, let's just give it another minute and then we can close if there's no questions.
Thank you so much, Mel.
Okay. Thanks, Carrie. So I guess we're good.
Yeah. Well, this will be up on our website. So I'll send you the link when it's up there, and everyone else, you can access it at marylandbuilders.org whenever you like.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I wish everybody a good
right.
and safe rest of the day, and we will check out for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Mo. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Bye.